My name is Eileen McMahon. I'm a life sciences lawyer at Torys, and you may know that medical cannabis for medical use, has been legal in Canada since 2001. So I've had questions over the years regarding regulation for medical, and most recently, of course, recreational, having been legal for about a week now. So today I'm going to take you through 3 topics in our short time together. The first has to do with why is law interfacing with cannabis. Second is the supply chain. And third, what can we expect next? So if we turn to this slide, you might ask yourself, well, why do lawyers love cannabis? And here's the reason. Apart from taking the edge off of lawyers, it interfaces with so many areas of the law: tax law, crossing the border, employment law, IP, regulatory, financing, real estate, on it goes. So hence, incredible legal developments and legal involvement in this industry. I'm just going to touch on a few topics today. Turning to supply chain, you may ask yourself, well, what are the laws that are involved here? There are laws at every level of the supply chain, starting out federally. So this is going to be Health Canada as your regulator. A licensed producer like Emblem or Canopy have federal licenses. This is not for the faint of heart. These applications are tougher than the NDS process. Inspections, regulatory submissions, lots of back and forth, security controls, now security checks on officers and directors up the supply chain. So not for the faint of heart by any means. A question has been asked about logistics and exemptions. There are exemptions, for example, for logistic companies who are operating under the auspices of a license for a licensed producer. So that's an exemption that I thought I would mention. Turning now to the provinces. So you may say, well, what is the role of the provinces? Again, right across Canada, provincial laws, they differ from province to province. Ontario was the latest to the game. With the change in the Ford government, was completely overhauled. Our regulations aren't even published for comment yet. Some provinces are a public system, some are private, so retailers can be set up if they seek licenses. Others are a mix of public and private. Then you turn to the municipal laws, because some municipalities are saying, not in our backyard do you set up. So you can see all of the different levels of laws regarding, for example, the sale of cannabis for recreational or for medical purposes. Pharmacies. Pharmacies have a role. Shoppers Drug Mart, for example, has a license to sell for distribution purposes for medical. In a case like that, a pharmacy does not need a provincial license. The federal license is sufficient. So the advantage of having a pharmacist, for example, for medical use is that you could approach this person as an intermediary and ask about drug-drug interactions, for example. Or is this the right type of strain to buy if I would not like to have couch lock effect? I would like more CBD than THC, for example. So those types of questions could be put to that intermediary. By show of hands, I'd like to ask the question about medical purposes. Do you think that if a person wants to purchase for medical purposes, will they buy from a pharmacy? Or are they likely to go directly online to the licensed producer, for example, and buy that way? So those who think from a pharmacy, please raise your hands. So it looks to be a mix. So people may test. Certainly in my circle of friends, lawyers like the comfort of a pharmacist as an intermediary. You know, if they're on Lipitor, if they're on another medication, they're curious about the drug-drug interactions. The one other question I wanted to address has to do with export-import. So Export-import is restricted to 3 areas: for medical use, scientific use, and industrial hemp. So you can't import, for example, cannabis that was grown in Africa for recreational purposes. So the supply chain is limited on that front. So this question is for people who do and perhaps have used a VCR, the baby boomers. Do you think baby boomers are more inclined to purchase for medical or for recreational use? Show of hands for those thinking baby boomers will purchase for medical. I would say most of the audience thinks that the purchases will be for medical use. So what lies ahead? The regulations are very strict. So advertising and promotion, you perhaps have seen in the newspaper what a package looks like for cannabis for recreational purposes. Very black and white, not a lot of images that are appealing, for example, and that was quite deliberate. The legislation reads like a criminal statute. And there are lots of rules about not making lifestyle desirable, not showing people in pictures. The New Brunswick cannabis store, which is provincially run, had their hands slapped already by Health Canada. On the online store, they had an image of a woman practicing yoga. That was considered to be offside. They had an image of young persons, millennials, on a couch laughing. That was considered to be offside. No fines, but Health Canada is indicating that it's going to take a strict approach to start. The boundaries will be blurry to start, I expect. And there'll be some companies that want to test those boundaries to see what would be permissible by way of informational promotion. Police enforcement, you may have read as well that for illegal dispensaries, the police are starting to crack down, and there have been regulators urging what used to be the illegal dispensaries to apply for provincial licenses so that they have a pathway forward. Dosage forms like edibles and concentrates are to come in 2019 by way of law. There are already natural health products, over 200 of them, approved that have either cannabis or hemp as an ingredient, active or inactive, and that's going to increase, I predict. IP, the curve is exponential. The Canadian filings are in the trademark side, clearly an exponential curve. The patent filings, we heard from John and from Kim about the research being conducted and patents being filed. The Canadian graph is less exponential than the US one. The US one shows an exponential curve on patents filed. Border crossings. There has been some clarity from the US border control regarding investors, bankers, others engaged, or officers, directors, employees in this industry, and whether they could be prevented from crossing the border and why. This in itself is a subject we could speak about, but there are some good rules in terms of border crossings. So that's just to sum up today a few of the legal issues that we're seeing in this industry, and it's great to know that Canada is a leader not only in mining, but also in cannabis.